Hi everyone! Today I'm going to show you how I make this really simple artisan style bread. If this is your first time to my channel, please take a moment to subscribe and like this video. So here I've got my KitchenAid mixer and I'm adding 1.5 cups of warm water. You want it to be around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. And then I'm going to be adding half a teaspoon of active or instant yeast. And then I'm actually going to let this sit for about 5 minutes. The original recipe that I used for this doesn't ask for this step, but it also wants you to rise the bread for 18 to 24 hours. I never have that much time because I'm usually putting it together really quick because I want it for dinner that night. So I do this part because it just activates that yeast a little bit quicker and makes it much easier to do. As you can see here, letting that yeast just sit for a few minutes starts to bubble and starts to really activate. Now we're going to start with our ingredients. I start off with 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour. Here I've got 2 teaspoons of coarse sea salt. And I'm going to let this mix. Here I'm adding another 1.5 cups of flour for a total of 3 cups and letting that mix as well. You'll know your dough is good when it starts to pull away from the sides like it's doing here and forming a dough ball. Now the original recipe that I have this based on does not require any kneading, which is traditional in an artisan style bread, but because I want this bread to be ready to cook in a couple hours instead of 18 to 24 hours like the original recipe asks you to have it rest, I kneaded it for 5 minutes on a medium speed in my KitchenAid, or you can do it by hand if you don't have a stand mixer. And now I have this soft, pliable dough that's a little bit sticky that I'm going to put into my Dutch oven and let rest until I am ready to bake it, which on this day it was around 4 to 5 hours that I let it rest in there. I just popped the lid on to keep it on my countertop in a warm place. It doesn't have to be extra hot or anything. Now after about 5 or 6 hours on this particular day, I popped the lid off of my Dutch oven, and as you can see, that beautiful dough has risen really nicely. It's probably tripled in size. Now I'm preparing a crinkled up piece of parchment paper with just a little bit of flour, and we're going to take that dough out of the Dutch oven and place it on there. It does deflate quite a bit when you take it out, but that's okay because we're going to let it sit on the counter and rest for an additional 30 minutes while we preheat our Dutch oven. I put the Dutch oven with the lid on in an oven set to 475 degrees Fahrenheit for half an hour. Yes, that is very hot, but that is the point of this bread, is we cook it at a very high temperature. So now I'm just going to shape that loaf into the style that I want, and I am going for more of like an oblong shape. A lot of times I do a round bread when I'm making an artisan style bread. And then I take a really sharp knife and I just mark some X's in the top, and then I let it sit there for that half an hour. Now this is our very hot, smoking hot, in fact, Dutch oven. After half an hour, we're going to pop our bread that has been resting for half an hour. As you can see, it gets quite a bit bigger and puffs back up even in that short amount of time. Carefully positioning that so that you don't burn yourself. Popping the lid back on the Dutch oven, and then it's going to go into our oven for 25 minutes with the lid on, and then we take the lid off after and bake it for an additional 8 to 10 minutes. This day I did actually end up cooking it for closer to the 10 minutes, and it was a little bit too long. When it comes out of the oven, you'll see that the top is a little bit darker than I would normally like. In the future, I would probably definitely go closer to the 8 minutes, maybe even 7. Other times that I've made this bread, I've cooked it at about 450 instead of 475. Obviously, you have to be very careful getting it out of the pan, as it's quite hot, but it is a very sturdy bread. Really important step is you want to let this bread cool. The original recipe that I based this on said for half an hour. I like my bread really hot still when I'm going to have it, and I'm having it with stew this night that you would have seen in my last What's for Dinner. I let this rest for about 15 minutes just so you can handle it, but you can see all those delicious air pockets, that crust, it's chewy, it's soft, it's the perfect artisan bread. And that's it for this week. So thank you guys so much for joining me again. Make sure you hit that subscribe button before you leave, and have a great day.